let's talk about the history of the 2008 election. Now that we're going into the 12 election, it's important to go back and understand what happened in '08. Even if you were there and you followed it, you may not see it through the same perspective that I do, so let's discuss it. At the beginning, Hillary was the absolute guarantee of winning the Democratic nomination. Nobody thought it would be a contest. And Obama rose charismatically with his book signings, the huge mobs he had at them, and eventually moved into a candidacy and really gained enormously through grassroots campaigning and hope and change and all of that to upend Hillary in the Iowa caucuses. Then Hillary came back in New Hampshire, and everything then hinged on what would happen on Super Tuesday. Obama lost Super Tuesday. Hillary won it. She carried California and New York and Massachusetts and all of the really big states. But Obama had fashioned a challenge which hinged on two fundamental insights that Hillary's campaign missed. The first insight was that the delegates are being selected by proportional representation rather than winner take all. So when you won a huge primary like New Jersey, like Hillary did, and won it by a convincing margin of 55 to 45%, and 109 delegates were at stake, all you picked up was a margin of 11 delegates. And when you won Idaho, which was a caucus where Hillary didn't compete, with 14 delegates, and you won that 13 to 1, your margin in Idaho exceeded your margin in New Jersey. And Hillary just didn't get that. So she concentrated everything on winning the primaries in the big states, while Obama more or less let her have those, kept his vote up, but let her have it, and went to the small caucus states, where by using university students, he was able to pack the caucuses and do very well without being opposed by an effective Hillary organization. The second insight was that Obama's people realized that in the past, presidential candidates were knocked out of the box when they lost key primaries like California, New Jersey, and New York. And the reason they were knocked out was not that they weren't popular, but that they couldn't get any more money. That once they zeroed out in those states and spent all their money pursuing them, donors wouldn't give them any more because they didn't think they had a shot. And therefore those defeats were always knockouts. But what Obama understood is that if your fundraising base is an internet fundraising base, where you just click on a mouse and you get additional money coming in, you can reload a lot faster than somebody that uses the traditional big money base. So after Super Tuesday, Hillary spent all of her money winning Super Tuesday. And there were 14 days of caucuses and small primaries, states like Wisconsin and Minnesota and Washington State and Maryland and Virginia. And Hillary had nothing in those states. She had no money. She was broke. She would re-up her Rolodex and call the people who hadn't given her yet, but it would be weeks before she would get that money. But meanwhile, Obama just clicked and got the money pouring in and was able to be competitive in those states and won them all, which gave him a margin at that point of about 150 delegates over Hillary, trumping Hillary's victory on Super Tuesday. Then, and only then, Reverend Wright made his appearance in the campaign, and we discovered these horrible videos where he dumps on America. Now, Hillary had those videos back in December. Why she didn't use them is anybody's guess. But it was a total mystery, and her failure to use it cost her the nomination. Now, with the Reverend Wright stuff out there, one after another, the industrial states turned against Obama and turned for Hillary. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, those big states all went for Hillary. But Obama still had his caucus organization and still had a pretty good lead left over from that early February period. And Hillary could never catch up because all of her victories were in proportional representation situations where the actual number of delegates she got out of it was fairly limited. And that situation proceeded straight through to June, when finally Hillary gave it up and dropped out. Then Obama hit a disaster, which was the summer, when energy prices, gas prices, soared. And everybody knew that Obama was opposed to offshore oil drilling and Alaska oil drilling. And people really realized that because he was opposed to the drilling with this high gas price, he wouldn't find any relief. He wouldn't bring them down. And Obama's lead began to slip over the summer. And as people began focusing again on Reverend Wright in the general election this time, his margin began to drop. Then McCain nominated Sarah Palin as his candidate for vice president, and that was electrifying. It energized the country. It took the country by storm, and her speech at the convention was fantastic. And as a result, Obama came out of those two conventions trailing John McCain for the first time in the history of the race. And John McCain kept that lead up for 3 weeks until about September 20th. Now, after that, Sarah Palin crashed and burned. She did a very bad job on the Katie Couric interview. She did well in the debate against Biden, but who wouldn't? But she ultimately really failed to answer a lot of the questions she needed to. But the bounce she'd given McCain was terrific and was staking him to a lead as late as September 15th or 20th. Then on September 15th, Lehman Brothers went bust, and all attention focused on the TARP bailout that was being proposed in Washington. And the TARP came up for a vote in the Senate, and it passed easily, with Obama and McCain both voting for it. And then it moved to the House. And in the House Republicans rejected the TARP bailout. They said there is no reason to pass out these huge checks. Just set up an insurance program with premiums built into all the loans the banks make. And you don't have to add to the deficit. You just need the threat of a federal presence there to stabilize the markets and back up the banks. And they rejected the TARP. But then Bush called for another vote. And McCain announced he was going to suspend his campaign and go to Washington to deal with TARP. And everybody expected that he would craft a solution that did not involve spending billions and trillions of dollars as the TARP program was. But he didn't. He caved completely, like a cheap suit. He went along with TARP. He voted with TARP. He undermined the Republicans in the House and got them to approve it. And from that minute on, the election was basically over. There was a little bit of a flurry 2 weeks out when Joe the plumber showed up Obama for advocating income redistribution, and that may have cut Obama's margin a little bit, but basically the election was over. The lesson we have to take out of this is that Obama won this election while he was losing it. He was losing the nomination in April, May, and June. He pulled it out because of what he had done in February. He was losing the election in the first half and two-thirds of September. He pulled it out because McCain just obviously had nothing to offer about the economy, and the economy collapsed, and it was clear that some kind of a change was needed. And he almost blew it at the end with the redistribution of income. So those who see the 2008 election as being this massive mandate for Obama really are misreading the history of what actually happened. In the next few videos, history videos, we'll talk about other elections in the past, and you might find it interesting. But there's a key election coming up this November, and my dog is running for president. Dubs runs for president. Dubs, went to Washington in a children's book that we published where he toured all of the great monuments and discovered the greatness of America. And Dubs was so inspired by that he decided to run for president himself in this new children's book that you can order at dickmorris.com. Now, I have to tell you, I'm a little disappointed because Dubs hires Karl Rover to be his consultant, not me. And Dubs will fight America's enemies, the bad guys who live overseas. Fidel Castro, Vladimir Putin, and Hugo Chihuahua all better beware because President Dubs will come over there. And if you're an early morning person, on Monday on Fox and Friends at 6:15 a.m., Dubs is announcing his presidential candidacy live and on the air. But seriously, the purpose of this book is to help your kids follow the presidential election, understand what the conventions are, what the debates are, what the caucuses are, what the polls are, through the eyes of Dubs as he pursues the presidency as the nominee, by the way, of the Canine Party, opposing Felix the cat on the Feline Party. Thanks a lot.